Damn it! Sorry about that. Okay, from this point forward, we're being recorded. We'll work that out. I'm embarrassed. It was too hard to organise it at the beginning. So again, there are people in the room to start with Wikipedia, with Google, again. So where do you go from there? What are you looking for when you're doing research? The cases and the laws surrounding. The laws surrounding, yeah. So you're working out what the issues are and what the laws are. So what do you do when you don't know what a case is? So, you know, we know during contract law, chances are Carlisle and Carbolic smoke ball will be a, you know, evidence of something, might be handy. What do you do when you've got no idea what the cases are? Where do you go then?
Is that when you use like a keyword?
Keyword? Absolutely. So you're taking a keyword to a search place. Absolutely. What else might you do? What else can you do? Keyword searching. How do you select what database to use? Based on what you're looking for. Based on what you're looking for, absolutely. So now might be a good time to start talking to, or asking Pauline to give us a bit of a look about, look at some of the key things that she finds useful. Are you happy to do that?
Yeah, sure.
So I can get you to drive from over there. It's a little bit messy, sorry. I can move that one up. Yep. Can't believe I didn't hit record. One job. One job.
So I'm not sure if many of you have looked at the Legal Research Methods Guide by the library website. Has anyone had a look at that? Yeah. So I guess when you've got a legal problem or you're working on an assignment, I would recommend going to the guide first of all, which I'll show you how you get to it. It has all of the databases collected in the one spot, and I've listed them under, you know, cases, legislation, commentary, all of that. So I'll show you how you get to that. So just from the library homepage, under the by subject, just go to business and law. And from there, you just select legal research methods just here. So the guide, I'm always looking at updating it. So if you sort of have any suggestions about anything that I can add to the guide that would make it more useful for you, please send me an email. I can give you my email address. But from here, I've created the guide where these tabs, you click on the tab, for example, legislation, it will take you to the major database that we subscribe to for legislation. And then if you scroll down further down the page, you can see there's some additional information as well. So, I mean, we've got quite a lot there, and I'm not sure, has anyone done, I'm sure you have, the introduction to the Australian legal system, the law. Yeah. So you've had a look at some of the databases. Is there any, do you have any questions? Because I'm sort of, I won't run through each database, I guess. I'd like to answer some questions if you have any that would be more worthwhile than me just running through the databases. Or anything that you're not familiar with, like just to sort of carry on with the topic about where to start with legal research. I'll let you ask me a question in a minute, but I just thought of something with the, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the encyclopedias. So if you've had a look at those, that's a great place to start.
The Encyclopedia of Forms and Precedents is something that's specifically referred to in one of my assignments. So that might be one that actually, I don't think that's on the encyclopedia.
Well, it's not, no. So I will move it.
So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it, so that you could show them how to find it.
Yeah, I will move it to that. I can add it to that tab as well, but it's under practice materials just here. So if you've got, there's the Australian Encyclopedia of Forms and Precedents. If you click on the link, it just takes you to Lexis Advance. So what you need to do is then click on the link here, and it will open up at the encyclopedia.
So encyclopedias can be a really great way. They're actually very similar to textbooks in some ways. One of the things that can be quite handy, particularly in kind of, I don't know if you do this, Danielle, when you get that question thinking where does it start, is to look at words and phrases that have been judicially considered to work out whether, if your boss is talking about the SEC law of the trust, has the term SEC law been dealt with, particularly or if you're looking at a piece of legislation, have any of the words in the paragraph or the section you're dealing with, have they actually been judicially considered? How recently, at what level, can be a really handy thing. And just starting with that overview before you're getting right into the cases, giving you some idea of where the law.
So there's the area of law listed here. So you can either search it two ways by finding the area of law and then just clicking on the plus. You see, it just takes a bit of time to load, and then sort of drilling down that way. Or you can do a search up here, and it will be searching only in this source. So you can do it that way as well. And we've also got the Holsbury's Laws of Australia and the Laws of Australia. So those, like they'll talk about the area of law, legislation associated with that area of law, and cases in that area as well. That's a good starting point.
So if you're unsure, even like clearly while you're doing an assignment in law school, for example, if I give you an assignment, chances are it's going to relate to contract law, and chances are it's going to relate to some of the topics in the bit of contract law that I get to teach you. In the real world, it doesn't necessarily work so easily as that. You've got to actually work out what the generic heading is as well. But at least now you know it's contract, or it's tort, or it's M&A, or whatever it is that you happen to be studying. So you know you can go into that area. And sometimes even, again, that idea of the index, of even just looking at the chapter headings, can give you some insight into what direction you might go. It's a great way to start. If you think, okay, there's a chapter here on settling a trust, chances are this is going to give me enough of an overview to understand why this problem is of particular interest. Make sense?
Also, we've got commentary on all of the major databases. Oh, that just happens. I'm not sure why, but I'll see if I can go back from here. Yeah. So we've got commentary here, and we've got commentary on all of the major databases. So Lexis Advance, CCH, IntelliConnect, and Westlaw AU. So commentary, you can find the latest information on specific areas of law, and these are linked to the commentary. So, I mean, I haven't added them all because we've got a lot on CCH, but for example, on Lexis Advance, if you're looking at Australian corporations practice, just click on the link, and we have it here. And you can once again either drill down or do a search through here. But it's a good place to start if you're looking at an area of law you're not sure of.
Also handy is for those of you who have elected not to purchase the recommended text, because we're only recommended now, we've got no required text anymore. So if you've elected not to purchase a recommended text, or even if you have, and it's just sometimes the way somebody writes something just doesn't resonate with you, if you've read something in the textbook and it's not making sense, I find a really good thing is to try Holsbury's Laws of Australia or the Lexis Advance version. Can't remember what I use. I don't know why I don't use Lexis that often, but that's again just habit. I use Jade quite a lot. That's as much habit as anything else. I use Jade. I use Laws of Australia quite a bit. I use Oxley quite a bit. Partly the reason I make choices that I make is I'm not a big fancy marble law firm anymore. I'm just me. And the rules of RMIT's library say that I'm not really supposed to use that stuff for commercial purposes.
Oh, okay.
So particularly if I need to share something with a client or otherwise, then I will use the free resources first. Then I'll get off my bottom and go to the Law Institute Library or the Supreme Court Library, where the terms of use are slightly different. But yeah, I'm a girly swat, right? Like, I spent 30 years being a lawyer. I'm not going to go and breach a copyright rule for stupid reasons. So, and partly it's habit. I'm sounding like much holier than I really am. I mean, a large part of it is habit. I find Jade in particular has a lot of visual stuff, which I find really useful. So particularly being able to use, because I have a pro access to Jade, I can see case timelines, for example, which are really interesting to me. Also, my usage points are different. I suspect one of the reasons I was really pleased to hear that you're a litigator or have a litigation focus is you're looking at those questions from the point of view of being a disputes lawyer, where I'm looking at cases largely from an avoidance point of view because I'm writing transactions. I want to make sure that my clients don't make the same mistakes or get themselves into the same kind of problems that those people who've been lucky enough to end up in the High Court have made. So I'm looking at it for, you're often looking for an argument that you can continue with. I'm looking to cut out an argument altogether. So the focus is slightly different. But it is interesting. Some people love different databases and get very used to, the way that the keyword searches work because they are different in each database.
Yeah.
I'd like to look at, ask you to point some of that stuff out. Yeah. But I think it does become a bit habit forming, doesn't it?
I guess
more familiar with one.
I mean, I could sort of mention the differences between a couple of them if you like. So I have linked to Jade on that under the cases here. So if you're interested to having a look at what Jade is and how it works, it's just there. So it's a free service. It's free. It's not a subscribed database.
So they will give RMIT students. In fact, we should get that detail on that page actually. Yeah,
because I wasn't sure if RMIT students have a free.
They will give students free access to the pro version. They have a code for each university.
Yeah.
And I can double back with you on that.
You just need to register for it.
And you need to register for it. They'll give you the pro access. And it has a few, particularly those of you who are visual thinkers might find it quite useful. The other thing I like about Jade actually, which I think does in the free service as well, is one of the first things it shows you when you bring up a case is it'll show you which paragraphs of that case have been cited the most often, which I am lazier than all of you combined, I know that. But if I've got 20 cases, and particularly when I'm reading your assignments, and some of you are smart and you throw in some case I haven't heard of, I can quickly look it up, and the paragraphs that are cited most, I can go directly to that paragraph. And so that paragraph, if it's the one that's cited most often, it's probably got the most important legal point in it. Not necessarily, might not even be the point that you're going for, but at least I can have a look, particularly if you haven't pinpointed. So that's me.
Okay. So, I mean, I could just talk about the difference between the databases just quickly. So the difference is, so between Westlaw AU and Lexis Advance, I guess the main difference is that they we have different reports available in each one. So you can use one or the other, but you will find, say, the Commonwealth Law reports in Westlaw AU in full text, or you'd find the Federal Court reports or Victorian reports in Westlaw AU and not in Lexis Advance. Lexis Advance, they have the Australian law reports, but each database has a case citator. So it doesn't matter which one you use. When you do a search, you'll find the same cases, but one will have the full text and the other won't. So you could try both of the databases. That makes sense. So I guess the benefit using Lexis Advance is it's changed its platform where it's personalised now. So once you use Lexis Advance, that's just linked to the cases. I'll just go to the home page. So the home page of Lexis Advance is personalised. So once you use it, it will, you can add and change. So it'll bring up the history of what you've looked at. So if you've forgotten, I searched something yesterday, but I can't remember what it was, it'll always have a history there. You can set up alerts. So if you do a search on a topic, you can set alerts up. So if an article is published, it will come up in the alerts box. And this won't be all, it'll be different for each student. Each one of you will have a different page.
Yeah, you can see last time I was in there, I was clearly writing the second assignment for.
And then you can also...
Luckily, I did most of it somewhere else, so you can't see
right.
what I was looking at. There you go.
And you can also add favourites. So if you're used to looking at, for example, standard form contracts, you can set it up in your favourites box, so you can just go straight to it. You don't need to go through the database to find it. And also I find that you can also add folders, so you can collect cases in folders or journal articles.
So you could gather all of the materials that are interesting to you for contract law in one place, and for torts in another folder, and for something else.
And you don't have to log on, like just when you log on to your RMIT login, it'll have your saved searches there already. So that's the added feature of Lexis Advance. But I guess they're quite similar in their ways of searching. Really, I find. I mean, I don't use one over the other. I guess I think Lexis Advance does, when you do a search, it does bring up some more recent judgments. I think that's the case. Like, so something that hasn't been reported yet, so unreported judgments. And the searching connectors are similar in each database. So this might be something that you might not have looked at yet, but each database has these connectors. So, I mean, I don't know, when you're doing a search, you might come across some legal phrases like just terms or reasonable compensation.
Well, we've got a question here actually about topic searches, for example, rule of law. So the topic, rule of law.
So that's the topic, rule of law.
So why don't we have a look and see how you might look for that?
Okay.
So as
all right, I'll just
as a word, I'm assuming that our questioner was asking in relation to that as a phrase judicially considered.
Okay, so what I would do if I had a topic of law that I wanted to, so do you mean like to find it in journal articles?
Yeah. Journal articles, or even whether it's determined in a case.
Yeah, okay, either one then.
About rule of law.
So if you were, so we'll go to cases, for example, and we'll have a look at Westlaw. So when you look up, when you've got the search page here, you can see you can either do a free text search up here or a catchword here. So the difference between those, free text is just any keywords that you kind of create or you're thinking of. The catchwords is like it's been listed in the case, so it's a catchphrase, like a legal phrase. So
effectively,
I'll try this one.
I can't remember what they're called. It's gone out of my head. But the Council of the Court Reporters have come up with however many hundred catchphrases. So they're like sort of the original hashtags, but for case law. And so all cases that involve negligence will have the catchphrase negligence.
That's right.
All contract cases will have contract. But then it might say contract misrepresentation. So there's a list of defined catchphrases, and all of the databases use those catchphrases. It's like, now I say the word catchphrase out loud, I just want to say hashtags, like legal hashtags, but that's effectively what they are, and they serve exactly the same purpose as putting a hashtag on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Just you're always going to find them that way, and they're just as useful or unuseful as a hashtag on social media because they will catch everything.
I'm not sure rule of law is a catch. It's not a catchword.
No, it won't be a catchword by itself.
So for example, if you were looking for that, you could do free text. But what those connectors were meaning, if you've got a legal phrase, you need to use the quotation marks, so it will find those words together, not separately in the article. So that's, let's see what we come up with here. And I'm searching in case law for cases at the moment. So it'll only look for cases, not journal articles. If you were looking for journal articles, you can go through the journals tab that was there.
Where did you pick up?
Oh, So when I'll go back and show you. I'll show you how I got to that. But there, so okay, I've got rule family law, but oh, here's one rule of law. I don't know why it's picked up that, but it'll pick up these the terms. It's funny that I've used the catchphrase, but
you've used it in inverted commas.
Yeah.
It's interesting sometimes to A/B these in different databases and to see how those processes work. Because again, that the free text can be quite powerful in some of these databases now.
Yes. So I'm not sure why it's picked up that with the quotation marks there, but I'll just go back just how I got to that cases. I think you were. So when I was at the library guide, so if you select cases, if you go via the tabs and click on the database name, it's been set up so it'll only search for cases. If you clicked on journals and went to Westlaw, it's set up to only find journal articles, but you can always change it yourself. I'll try it here. And if we click search, it will find the journal articles.
So just quickly, when do you think you might use a journal article as opposed to going directly to the cases or the legislation? In what kind of context might journal articles be the place you want to go?
For an essay.
For an essay? So what kind of essay?
A research essay.
I'm trying to needle this out of you very, very slowly here. What about you guys? When might you? Sorry, everybody, welcome Ryan. Ryan's from Minters. Minters are supporters of the LSS. And so when might you use a journal article? In what kind of context do you think?
So I would probably use a journal article when I know the topic of what I want to research, but I might not have a case to go to. So a good example would be a supervisor or someone who's just giving me work and said, we want to find out about this. We need a case on point. This proposition of law. Help you. And then I would go away knowing that small piece of information, and I would probably search for a journal because it's highly likely they've cited cases that I can then use for what I need.
Also, I think in a research essay context too, often you're being asked a question about your opinion. And one of the things that makes your opinion look awesome is when other people who have been peer reviewed have similar opinions to yours, not the same, because that's called plagiarism, but similar opinions. What actually makes your opinion even more awesome is when you have a different opinion from a peer-reviewed article, but you can acknowledge the peer-reviewed articles and say why you have a different point of view, or that you can look at 2 or 3 different peer-reviewed articles, compare, contrast, and come to your own point of view. That's called synthesis. That's what makes you master's students. In the real world too, often you'll go to journal articles particularly when you're trying to seduce or win a client, when you are trying to demonstrate that you are experts in the field. Have either of you ever been asked to write pieces for your website or for other marketing materials or others that demonstrate that your firms have some expertise or a point of view about a new case or something like that? Is that you have? No?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in our regulatory practice, Intralos, we've got a blog, and that's pretty useful in terms of showing to the client that we're on top of current issues and providing updates to them and to you guys as students. They're a pretty great resource as well, because they cover issues that happen now. If we write anything on there, it's because it is on date. Even after a few weeks, a lot of the information becomes out of date, so it's all uploaded as soon as it is used. And synthesizing journal articles is a big part of that. It helps colour the opinion that we write up there, that becomes the news.
And one of the sources that I would suggest to you, again, this is where Google can be your friend. when the law firms are providing opinion pieces, now it's not peer reviewed. You have to recognise that that's not peer reviewed, but it's often expert opinion. So first drafts will, please stop me if you don't agree with me as the way the first drafts or second, third drafts even will be prepared by junior lawyers in the firms who are in the practice group, who are learning from the experts every day, who are reading the cases, looking at the journal articles. But ultimately that will be signed off by a person who is actually has been in court or has been at the front line of the transaction. It will reflect what's actually happening. And yeah, it's not peer reviewed, but that doesn't make it rubbish. And when it is peer reviewed, it can still be rubbish. So it's about actually part of what you're needing to do is be judicious about the choices you make. Recognise that something isn't peer reviewed, but what value it adds. But do not be shy about questioning what is peer reviewed too. You just need to understand where the differences are. So you wanted to make a comment or add a question?
How you're saying like about how you have your blogging to keep current. Is there any way as a student, like any resources available to keep that currency without delving into searches? Like are there any good journals or opinions that you can like follow? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
To just keep up to date more casually.
Getting from Minter LSS, I would recommend Minter LSS. But that's if you're interested in the tech side of law or like the regulatory space. So it might have articles about the ACCC. I wrote one about Valve Corporation and their interaction with the ACCC. It's called Minter LSS Intelligence, so you can have a look at that one. But most law firms have a similar product that will focus on a different area of law. So I think it's really helpful if you just check out what law firms have, and one of them will be aligned with what you're interested in, or even if you don't know what you're interested in, it's a great way to scope out what areas of law, what practice areas, focus on areas of law to help guide you on that.
Anybody ever use Google Alerts? So you can actually get Google to send you an email every hour, minute, day, week, month. You decide that's coming up with things in your keywords. So I have Google Alerts on contract cases because, hey, I don't need to go out and look if Google's going to come back and tell me when decisions have been made or when law firms are writing interesting things about it. And if you're clever about the terms that you get, sometimes a bit of a trial and error with it because, you might suddenly you get just getting thousands every day. So you might want to refine a search to make sure that there's a .com.au in the provider or there's, get your search terms down to what you're really interested in. But there are lots of different ways that you can effectively follow what's happening in a particular space. Particularly certain areas where you will just drown. I'm particularly interested in disruption and technology in law. And if I wanted to, I could just spend my whole day just keeping up with the stuff from 3 days ago, and there's, it's never ending. So you do have to be a little discerning, but we all know that about Google, right? It's just a big fat fish in there.
And all of the databases also have a similar feature. So, like for example, CCH IntelliConnect has tracker news.
Yep.
So you can set it up for any area of law for it to be informed of any changes that are happening. So that's in this one in particular. So it's called CCH IntelliConnect and it's under tracker news. You just need to set it up and choose your area of law.
So we've welcomed Ryan. I'm going to circle back a little bit here. So Ryan, you spent some time as a paralegal just completely focused on research.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you'd be prepared to share with us. I know you went to a different university, but that's okay. We like you anyway.
Glad it's out there now.
I just sort of an overriding question is, and I asked Danielle the same question at the beginning, is there anything that you learned about research at uni that you just find yourself using every day all the time? Or conversely, is there anything that you probably could have learned about but you didn't pay attention to that you really wish you'd spent a bit more time getting comfortable with, and why?
Yeah, so a bit of both of those. One thing I wish I'd really focused on is knowing the strengths and weaknesses of each database, because you've got a great spread of databases here, just from what I've seen in that list, what I've talked about. And understanding how you can use those tools to best achieve what you wanted to do. So, like I mentioned before, you might get a brief from a supervisor or someone who's asked you to find out the answer to a legal question. And my first instinct would be to actually go to Google or a journal article and find out the scope of that issue before I start delving into these databases, which can soak up so much time. But understanding where they're the strongest and where they maybe lack another database can pick up those weaknesses is really, really important for coming back with a full and a complete legal answer. So I think that would be my first takeaway of today, which is to really understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the tools that you have available. And lots of these are things that I have access to at work. So they're great things to get across now, so you don't have to think about it in the back of your mind later while you're worrying about larger context issues for the research question. And I think that would be my second point, is that in practice, focusing on the why of a research question it takes up so much time that you don't really, or that I don't have enough time to worry about which tool is best for me. That sits in background knowledge that I just know to do the task. And when I say the why of the legal question, that might be which client is it for, what space do they operate in, who is their market, what's the dispute happening, is it even for a dispute, is it for a contract, is it not for a client, is it for general knowledge inside the firm. So these are the types of questions that I'm actually thinking about while I'm researching, rather than the strengths and weaknesses of the tools that I'm using. So I think that's probably the flip side of it, is that in practice, I think about the context of the question a lot more than I did at university.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the Faustian bargain that we have. The reason you're doing assessment is so we can assess whether or not you've learned the things that you need to learn, whether you're capable of doing the research that you need to do. And so the why is slightly different from what the why would be in a law firm. And I guess I like to try and get it as close to the why in the law firm as I possibly can, because I don't want graduates to suck. Like, I have to deal with them a lot. So, like, it's really better for everybody if they don't suck. And so part of that is one of the valuable things that junior lawyers bring into a firm is you're fresh in the research space. There is an understanding that you should be able to do that you know where to look and you know how to pull the golden nuggets out of the piles of myths. And let's face it, there's piles and piles of myths out there. And so that's the thing that makes you valuable, if you can bring that gold into the partner or into the supervisor's space. But often too, the kind of problems that we give you, they involve individuals and they're all contained into one general legal area and pretty much contained across some topics, and all of that sort of thing is going on, where you might get asked a question and you don't even know where it fits in the larger piece of the transaction. So, 15 lawyers might be asked to look at 15 different sections of the Stamp Duty Act to come up with some idea of an argument. And you won't always have the luxury of knowing how it fits in. So asking the why is really important in my view.
I think time is also a massive difference. When you're at uni, you've got time to engage with the tools as Ryan was saying, get as good as you can, because in practice you do not always have the time. I got asked to find a case on the way to court the other day while I was walking on my iPhone. It's pretty stressful. So yeah, I think while you've got the time to really get good at using the tools, yeah, great opportunity.
Did you find
Found one that was good enough.
Absolutely. Any other questions, concerns, frustrations before we move to
What's the best way to look at the most current legislation on a particular topic?
that's exactly where I was about to ask Pauline to take us next if we didn't have any more questions, but we are.
Okay, so
So yeah, I just
Okay.
wondered if you could actually have a bit of a chat about the value of tools like Timebase and Casebase, etc.
Yep.
Sorry, that's
So-
going to keep it
oh, that's okay. No, just sometimes you can't go back on with these databases, so I'll just go back to the page. So the database you could use for that is Law 1, and I'll just get to the slide again. So legal research methods. So if you look at the legislation tab, so Law 1, you can have a look at, it gives you updates and amendments, so I can show you that. And part of Law 1, there's a section of, well, this is kind of opposite to your question, but there's a feature in Law 1 that's called Timebase. That'll log on. And Timebase is a feature in this database where you can look at a piece of legislation as it was, say, in 1960. Or so it sort of goes back in time. It's historical, but your question is not that. So,
No, in fact, you're answering a question I would have asked, so that's actually my fault.
okay. So yeah, it's got new legislation updates here that's come through on a daily basis. But if you were looking for a particular piece of legislation, you could just either do a browse search here through current acts, or you can just type in a search. So I'll just, I haven't had a look at this law tracker, but that's create alerts. So you can create an alert for a piece of legislation.
I can't actually, it'd be really cool to think of a way to use that in an environment that I'm probably the only one who's mean enough to think that that would be cool. I can't actually think about a way that you could use that in an assignment context, except for perhaps in a research project, possibly. If there was a particular area of law reform you're examining, you might want to actually make sure you've got alerts so that anything that's new that's under consideration you could deal with. Or the other thing is, again, this is probably going back too far into my history, subjects like tax, where the law can change with effect from the date that an announcement is made that it's going to change. So on the whole, retrospective legislation is, let's not get into a jurisprudence class here, but Kath's summary of how it works is, on the whole, retrospective legislation bad. But when it comes to changing the tax rules, what will happen is the Treasurer will make an announcement about how a tax or that a tax rule will change, and with the general gist of it, the legislation itself might come down many, many months later once they get the wording right, but the change will take effect from a particular date. So you might find that that kind of issue comes up in a subject like tax. Particularly if you're in a situation where you're looking at something where there's been an announced change but it hasn't been made yet, so you're trying to work out what that will happen. I don't think anybody here is mean enough to pull something assignment-wise around that, but you never know. You never know. In the real world, as an M&A practitioner, that is something that I'm needing to look at quite regularly, particularly if there are changes to the way that a capital gains treatment might work, or how a transaction would be valued and what would be included in and out, or if there is an international tax treaty that comes in and out. They're the kinds of things that you would need to monitor for. Again, Jade has a pretty nice feature in relation to looking at how the legislation changes. So you can do a comparison, you can pick 2 dates or up to 10 dates, I think, and you can look at a particular section and see over a period of time where changes were made. And you can also go back and look at if a case cites a section of an act, you're able to go back and see other cases that have cited the same section and what the section looked like at the time that it was cited, which can be, so often when we're doing research, we're looking back. So if we're saying, if we're looking at a case that deals with Section 52 of the Trade Practices Act, for example, that doesn't exist anymore, but we happen to know it's still relevant because it's almost exactly the same as Section 18 of what is now the Australian Consumer Law. And so we can trace that history back, we can see that wording, we can see how it works. But there are minute differences, and so you might find that particularly if you're looking at cases that deal with Section 53 or Section 56 of the Trade Practices Act, or 45AA or something like that, that you'll be moving backwards and you want to trace and see if the language was exactly the same, because you might want to distinguish a case for some reason. And often the value in research is being able to find something you can distinguish, find something that looks really similar to the circumstances you've got, but come up with reasons why it shouldn't apply. And we can distinguish on the facts, which is usually the easiest way, but we can also distinguish on the basis that there's been changes to the laws or interwoven laws in between. So looking at the history can be useful for that.
So this Timebase also does have a sort of similar feature to Jade, that so you've got the Act. If you click on Key Info just here, I'll just move that down.
Sorry. Just if you just hit this little slide there,
That
it'll
one.
just hide that.
Okay.
Sorry, there we go.
So this has key info relating to the Act. So you can get the bill, latest amendments, historical consolidations. So that's sort of, I can click on that. I'm not sure where it's going to go.
That takes you to, so you can look at what the Act looked like at a particular period of time.
That's right, yeah.
It's the whole of the Act, it's not section by
That's
section.
right, yeah. And this one will give you also cases relating to the Act.
Yeah.
So, but they're federal court cases, so it'll list all of the federal court cases relating to this Act. Yeah. And you can get the full text there. So, yeah, that might be handy if you're sort of trying to do some research relating to an Act.
And often that goes both ways. If you're looking at a case and it refers to some legislation, then looking at the legislation and seeing what it is, and then looking for other cases that cite the same legislation can be a way to get a bundle of law together that might be relevant to what you're doing.
Does anyone else have any questions in terms of databases? Me?
So I have a question for you, Pauline. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think it would be fine to speak a bit to the consider the database that you mentioned.
Sorry, I need you to speak a whole lot louder, sorry.
It would be fine to speak to the strengths and weaknesses of the database. We're talking about that being something we should know a bit more about.
Yeah, sure. Well, this particular one, I'm a big fan of, particularly that little key info drop-down menu up there. My firm still has a training session on this because it is so good. And it's really useful for tracking back legislation, particularly in the space of tax or maybe competition and consumer law, where the legislation has been changed and you need to track it back and find out what was actually written. And that you might need to do that if you've got some commentary that discusses the meaning of a particular phrase that you'd like to use somewhere else, perhaps in an advice or maybe you've seen it in a case or a contract. And finding those actual words just saves you a lot of time rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. And this
Quick links to the second reading speech and the explanatory memorandum can be really useful too, particularly for those of us who prefer narrative text to section after section after section. because you're getting the why.
Mm.
Now, that doesn't mean that the courts are going to interpret it the same way later on. You can't just do that alone. But by starting with the why, you often have a much broader framework for understanding what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And as a practitioner, responsible departments is also really useful to just know who it is that you might want to pick up the phone and talk to if somebody will talk to you. I don't know that it's a stupid way to do research either if you can get away with it, but as a law student, but you've probably learned something along the way. But I'm not going to suggest that. Okay, so the next thing actually I was going to ask Pauline, but actually it's kind of a question to the whole of the panel. You've done all this research. You've been to different databases to get their different strengths and weaknesses. You've read some cases, some other materials. You've now got a whole lot of information. What's the best way of storing and making sense of that for you? Like, what do you do with all of that data? Yeah. Well, what are you just printing it out and reading it and flagging it with sticky notes? Are you putting it into something and searching over it again? Are you how do you make sense of? Sorry, what was that? Apply to the facts. No. Sorry, that's what you're saying. Apply. Yeah. But you've got reams. Like, let's assume you've got reams and reams of paper. Okay. Again, my advice to everybody here has often been, don't start writing until you know what you're going to write. Because otherwise you fall in love with your words and you know, suddenly it's too hard to like delete that paragraph and next thing you know, it's just a mess. So again, just because it's my advice doesn't make it right. Like, you do it how you're going to do it. But if you're gathering all of this information, then how do you make sense of it? How do you make sure you don't forget things? I mean, everybody's got their different ways. I'm not suggesting it's the right way, but it's something that you guys need to think about. You're gathering all of this data inputs. How do you make sense of it? What do you do?
I use the program Satiro.
Tira?
Yeah.
Satiro.
Yeah.
Satiro.
Satiro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's like EndNote, yeah? Is that right? Yeah.
Mm.
So, and how do you find that? Excellent. Excellent. So what are the advantages of that for you?
When you're on the internet, on like Safari, for example, then you just click the button at the top and it saves it straight into the folder that I've got created for all my assignments. And it literally has everything that I've been looking at.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I've not played with it, as you can tell by me not knowing the name. I recognised what it is once I said it was like EndNote.
Yeah.
RMIT students have access to EndNote for no charge. My blanket advice on EndNote, I don't know if Pauline will agree with me here, is if you're going to do it early in your degree because there is a learning investment in using it. You do not want to, there's not enough value in it to do it in your like third year. But early on, if you can do it and get the discipline of doing it, you will need to fiddle around with getting the libraries right, because one of the things that it can do for you is format your citations. I've not updated mine to AGLC 4, but I assume it won't be terribly different. It's not easy. So there are some alternatives. Why am I talking shit here?
Oh, no. So we have got, like EndNote you can download for free. So you need to go, I can go back to the page just to show you how to get to this page. But what it is, you download it and it's like a referencing management soft tool. The only thing is with EndNote, a lot of the law databases, they don't have an export function, unfortunately, to export into EndNote. So a lot of the other databases like ProQuest, you can export the records from ProQuest or EBSCO into EndNote. But so the cases, law databases don't have that function. But does the Zotero have that? Like, does it work with the law databases? Do you know?
Yeah, if I've logged into RMIT.
Okay.
I can pull it back up.
Yeah. So you can download EndNote, but I'll just show you this. There's an alternatives to EndNote. I'll just see what they've got in there. So yeah, they've got Zotero there.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And
So
Mendeley.
Mendeley, yeah. So it's the choice. you can choose, we have lots of help for you, so you can just read through the help here. Downloads, so have a look at those, but it is worthwhile having a look so you're storing all of your references in one place. And then if you are using it to sort of work while you're typing up your assignment, it is really useful because it'll put your references in the correct citation.
So one of the things I see every single time I mark papers is there will be one or two people who have footnotes with a bracket or highlighting that says, put citation here. Or something similar, or like, even I love it when I get bracket citation needed. I'm like, yes, there is. Yeah. And the thing is, I get that. I completely get it, because what you're doing is you've done the work, right? You know, you've done the work. You know that that particular principle needs to be supported with a citation, but you've got so much research, you've actually got to go and look for it. So actually getting a kind of business process, for want of a better word, of collecting both the data, but also a proper and full citation, ideally formatted in AGLC4, but now I'm just like talking dirty. You just need to be able to collect that information and be able to reproduce it. You know, like me knowing you've done the work is not enough. You have to show me that you've done it.
Yeah, I'll back that point up as well. And that's probably my third takeaway, is that you've got to have a trail of how you got to your answer.
Yeah.
Even if it's not for the purpose of showing someone that reference, it's so that you know what you've already looked at. And if someone else is to pick up your work and to look at it, not knowing anything, they know what you've already looked at, so that they're not doing exactly the same searches that you are. And
the converse of that, as a supervisor, one of the first things that I will do when a junior lawyer does a piece of research for me is I always ask them to give me a full list of everything that they looked at. When you do it for me, you have to do it AGLC4 formatting, but I actually want it thematically. Like I want like on point A, I want everything. On point B, I want everything. Even if you don't rely on it, and annotate it for me if you can. You know, I looked at XYZ law firm's website. It looked exactly the same as what Meters is doing. Don't bother looking at both. Like, you know, that's useful to me because it's not wasting my time. Because in the real world, you're doing it to solve problems. Kind of need to do that for yourselves when you're pulling the information together as well. Sorry, I'm looking at my watch because I don't know about you, but I have to teach a class in 15 minutes. What about you, Danielle? How do you keep on top of what you've done and how you put things together?
I think that as I said before, one of my regrets is not engaging with like this technology of these things that I still don't know how to use now. So I'm more old school, I think, and it depends. I think I sound like I don't tend to know what I'm doing, but if I'm researching something, it would mean I don't really know much about it. So there are areas that I probably, not many, but that I wouldn't, you know, have to do much research in. But if I have to do research and I'm starting from scratch, where I'm Googling and I'm trying to understand content, I think I print a lot, like I read journals, I read as widely as I can, I try and get all the concepts down, I try and understand the bigger picture, and I kind of narrow down, and then things are going to become useless to you as you narrow down because you're understanding what's going on and what you're looking for and what you want. And then, I just drill down until I have, the critical documents, whether it be cases, journals, legislation, of what I'm trying to say, so I'm preparing a memo. So I'll lose a lot along the way, but maybe helped me get my head around what I was actually looking for. I print a lot, I read a lot, I read pretty widely. I like to understand things. I think when I was at uni, I had a lot of friends that would go into exams and be like, I hope that doesn't come up. And, they couldn't push concepts together, they couldn't link things because they didn't spend time kind of getting a big picture, whereas I'm very big on understanding why I'm doing things and why the floor's like this. So I spend time when I can bringing everything together.
So me, I'm a big fan of the mind map. Sometimes those of you who've been in my online shoots see my post-it note wall behind me with literally just bits of information together that I can move around. So some of those will be links to citations, materials, if that's the sort of thing I'm doing. There are lots of online mind mapping programs. The one I use is MindJet's one, which is ridiculously expensive, but they've had me for, they had me at hello. And one of the things I like about that is I don't have to print. And I do a lot of things on screen. I'm quite comfortable in that environment. So I can just drag my links and my citations together, and then I can move things around, and I can export out the bits I want into a Word document. And I use that as my first draft. Another thing I use a lot, which is free, and many people, I know many students find really useful, is EndNote. Not EndNote, Evernote. Have you seen that? It's free, it's got a little elephant on it. OneNote is sort of, it's like its baby brother at the moment. OneNote comes with Office 365, and it's basically like an electronic scratch pad. One of the things I love about Evernote is that you can search across the attachments. So I just use it as a big fat dumping ground, to be quite frank. It's just I read something that I think one day might be useful, pop it in there, pop it in, and then later on I'm thinking, oh, what is the collective noun for cheaters? Must have read that somewhere. By the way, it's a coalition. Anybody else watching David Attenborough? Don't you think that's so cool? A coalition of cheaters. I love it. So a coalition of cheaters. What else do I need to know about cheaters that I've sort of written in the past or read in the past? And the other thing with it might be the paid version that does it. It's not expensive. It's about $70 a year, I think. But I know that the paid version does handwriting recognition. So I can just scribble my notes. I don't know about you, but my bits of paper end up everywhere. Bottom of handbags, under wine bottles, on the tram. If I just take a photo of my handwritten notes, I put them into Evernote. Not suggesting that lawyers, you do that with privileged products, by the way, but I can put it in there. I can search for what it is I was looking for. So if I've been in a class, for example, and written down consideration, XYZ case, I can find it. So again, sometimes thinking, it's not just the work that you do, but then how do you make sense of that? And I think going into it, you do need to think a little bit about how you make sense of the research that you do. So do you feel Ninja qualified now? Because we really do need to finish up. So are there any last minute questions, concerns, frustrations? No, then thank you. And yeah, I'll let you finish us up there.
Everyone, thank you, Pauline, Danielle, and I really appreciate you coming out, especially right after work. We've managed to get some vouchers to show our destination for you all. Here we go. Thank you. And some for you as well.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Give it up your time.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you want to call during
Well, I'd like to thank the LSS in particular, and Steph in particular, who's put an enormous amount of work into making this happen. And yeah, clearly I thought having an additional research class at about this time each semester is a really valuable thing. And I think it's a great way to get to know your peers, but also to just think about it contextually. Any feedback that you might have about how we can do it better and who we should involve, I'm going to suggest you send that directly to Steph. Most of this was recorded and I will share a link with Steph as well. But good luck, and Pauline is the person to go to more questions with more questions.
Can send me an email. They don't have my details online anymore, but
something somebody knows that you don't.
yes. No. It's Pauline.King, King, at rmit.edu.au. So please feel free to send me an email if you need some help.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for coming. And particularly thank you to you people. I really hope you got some or all of that, and I will be in touch. Take care. I'm just counting you to see how many there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.